Miss Taylor Swift does not need me to come to her defense. I think she's fine, but
Hey, internet, I know this is more of a TikTok format than a YouTube one because I have not edited this at all. I have not scripted it. I am filming in bed. Please be nice to me. But I wanted to say something. I, just on the looking at how Hank Green responded to the Taylor Swift thing versus how Taylor Lorenz did. And sort of what that tells us and how I suppose TikTok and YouTube differ as platforms, but also on speaking about things without experts, which is fundamentally what TikTok is as a platform. Um, and I don't want to claim to be an expert by talking on YouTube, but um, I watch both their videos in full, and I've read literature that relates to read literature, fine, read articles that relate to both, and I've been trying to make myself as educated as possible on the subject at hand, which I don't, which I don't think Hank Green has done, and I think it's never showed more than right now. I think Taylor Swift is such an interesting topic because there's sort of like levels of understanding that people can have of her based on how obsessed with her they are. And like I think it's very easy to think of Taylor Swift as just another like when because that's kind of how she wants you to think of her as just another pop girly. Um, but broadly, that's kind of what everybody wants. It makes them mainstream, it makes them listenable, it gives them a lot of downloads. But she's not. Uh, she is a billionaire, as discussed. Like she's not like just another. I'm trying to think like Phoebe Bridges. She's not just another Phoebe Bridges. She wants you to think she's Phoebe Bridges, where like you've heard of her and you're like, yeah, I don't know what she does, but I guess she writes some sad songs sometimes and plays piano, and sometimes she wears cool outfits. She wants to be Phoebe Bridges. Sorry, this really pulled Phoebe Bridges into the matter where she didn't need to be. Forget I ever mentioned her name. But like she's not. She's not. She's fundamentally carrying out like and so I suppose sorry. I think Hank Green wants to think of her as a Phoebe Bridges, which is the image that she puts out. That is propaganda. She is not. And also, like, as soon as you know some more about Taylor Swift and you start following like her actions and who she hangs out with, we have to. It seems unfathomable because it is so crazy that this billionaire pop star would do this, but especially one who has like such a history of performative feminism. But I think the more you know about Taylor Swift and the more you see who she hangs out with, see who she's involved with, we have to accept that we're in a timeline where not that Taylor Swift, I don't want to imply that Taylor Swift is a Nazi or that like she approves of Nazism, but we have to accept that we live in a world where Taylor Swift is at the very least tolerant to radical right wing ideology, tolerant of radical right wing ideology, or radical right wing ideologists. Um, her friendship with Brittany Mahomes has come under fire when she hugged Brittany Mahomes after Brittany Mahomes' supposed endorsement of Trump. I have to say I don't really know what happened there, but like also it seemed like Taylor, wasn't. She could have said no, I don't support but Brittany Mahomes could have said as well, I don't support Donald Trump, I don't support right wing ideology. Um, uh, you know, even in or I don't stand with Brittany Mahomes. Like she made no statement on that. She made no statement. She was happy for people to just discuss. Um, and there's that picture of her with those dudes. I don't. So this thing, I don't know the context because I'm not Swifty and I don't follow her that closely. But this is where I want to talk about Taylor Lorenz and Kat Tenberg, who spoke about it, and it's much clearer when they talk about her. You know, Kat Tenberg is a self-proclaimed Swiftie, which is something that Hank Green obviously is not. You know, he's a man who is aware of the image that Taylor Swift puts out. He is not a man who has closely followed Taylor Swift's career. Kat Tenberg is, very evidently. And therefore, I think, you know, while the media and conversations that happen around Taylor Swift, I think there's a certain engagement level that obviously people who aren't like that close fans of her, like just, they're not going to have that discussion and have that conversation, and therefore these things don't come up. The Taylor Swift necklace merch, because of TikTok, has come up, has reached people who are not Swifties, people like Hank Green, but also because it's a conversation that has now, you know, introduced political conversation. It's reached political commentator Hank Green, who feels the need to give a statement about it. I don't think that he does need to give a statement about it. First of all, as he already says in the beginning, Taylor Swift is the last person who needs Hank Green to come to her defense. But obviously people don't really make TikToks just because they feel like they need to be made. They make them because making more TikToks feeds the algorithm. It makes you more popular, makes more money. And clearly Hank Green felt he had something valuable to add to the conversation. I think it's clear, and I think he knows now that he should not have spoken about this, mostly from the fact that he's deleted the TikTok. But I did just find it interesting that, you know, obviously that happened at all. And I think it really speaks to the split in like levels of the way that like Swiftyism does really seem like some sort of cult. I don't want to call it a cult, but you know, the idea that you can be further pulled in, and the topics of conversation that happened around that, I can't remember the word, but like, you know, that like kind of conversation, that kind of evidence doesn't get brought up to some people, but it does get brought up to others. And I think if you only want to look at like the mainstream politics of Taylor Swift, you're not going to find very much, because that's intentionally what she wants to put out. You know, she wants to be as mainstream and as palatable as possible. So she, you know, when feminism in the 2010s was popular, she rode that wave as hard as she could, but not to an extreme extent. You know, just to what was as palatable as, like, you know, white feminism, pop white feminism, which was incredibly popular, and you know, at Taylor Swift's level, not very deep, but very imaged across her, very associated with her symbolically. Does that make sense? Maybe it makes sense. I am literally just filming this off the dome, but it's not a meaningful way to engage with something. Like the same way you would with a government, I suppose. Like if you just took politicians at their word, that's kind of crazy. Like what actions? You have to look at the actions of these people. And you know, I think it's easy to forget that because she's a pop star. You know, it's easier to consume her without such a critical lens. But I just like to say, you know, if you're wondering why people are calling the Taylor Swift merch necklace a dog whistle, and that sounds extreme to you, because it did to me at first. I know I was very much of the same mind as Hank Green, where, you know, I was like, why would mainstream girly Taylor Swift release a necklace that's a dog whistle to fascists? Like, that's crazy. And I don't want to really comment on whether I think it is a dog whistle or not. I think I don't know enough. And I think that's what Hank Green just said as well. I don't know enough. Um, but what I will say is that I also didn't, I think as a lot of people did, even Swifties, avoided sort of avoided information and like press and like commentary about the life of the showgirl because like I heard it was bad. I heard there was AI involved. I heard that like about all of the there was obviously the criticism of all of the different like vinyl releases of it. So and I'm kind of over like not that I was ever really into Taylor Swift, but I was kind of over her at this point anyway. I was like, I don't really want to know. The thing is, if you go listen to the song Cancelled, okay, and then you look at all the pictures of Taylor Swift with Brittany Mahomes and the fascist, like the actual neo Nazis that she took a picture with, and like her general like promotion of like her involvement with the NFL now and the NFL, how the NFL is sort of portraying itself is very complicated. It's also like very patriarchal and like very like the way that she seems to want to push that she's kind of a housewife to Travis Kelce, who's doing the important, like dangerous work. Like that's so silly. She is a billionaire, a self-made billionaire as much as anyone can be.
I am in love with a guy who does that sport on that actual field. Like, that is violent chess. That is gladiators without swords. That is dangerous. Wow. I am, the whole season, I am locked in on what that man is doing on the field. Can you imagine if, like, he's out there every single week, like, putting his life on the line, doing this very dangerous, very high pressure, high intensity sport. And I'm like, I wonder what my choreo should be.
If you look at all of that in context, we do. I think we do have to accept, like, as soon as you know more about Taylor Swift and what she is doing at the moment, which I think a lot of people don't want to. A lot of people in the mainstream don't want to know, and they're happy to just listen to the music or like happy to listen to the music or whatever, but they don't really want to know more about her. I think as soon as you now look into the change up in what she wants to be about and what she's happy to tolerate in her spaces, we have to accept that even if it's not intended to be a dog whistle, Taylor Swift is tolerant to the right wing. And I think it's really important to talk about that. And Hank Green defending her, it was uneducated and was contradictory to the idea that she could be, because that's the image she wants to put out. She doesn't want to be labeled as right wing. I don't think anybody does. Well, that's not true, but I think a lot of, the majority of even right wingers would not want to be labeled as such. But like, yeah, she's fully. We have to admit that she's at least somewhat endorsed in that world. She's that's not the right word, but involved in that world, and endorses friendship with those people. And I think it's interesting that Hank Green thought that he didn't have to educate himself on this beforehand. I think it's just because of like Taylor Swift as a pop like icon, like a generally, I think, and there's so much. I suppose there's so much information that comes out about her that's not really about her, if you know what I mean. Like, if you take all of the like corporate consumerist images and like things that she can sell, like there's so much that is put out corporately. Her corporate output is so great that there's always mainstream objects to talk about without talking about her as a person. And if you look at just the objects by themselves, she plays it bland enough and broadly enough that it doesn't really have a particular political stance in itself. But it definitely is when you look at what she's broadening her scopes in her personal life to include the broadness and blandness of her music that's increased, is definitely not a dog whistle, but a tolerance of Nazis and right-wingers. So yeah. Anyway, I think Hank Green has deleted the TikTok. I don't know if I don't think he has put out a statement about it. But I'd highly recommend watching Taylor Lawrence's video and Kat Tenberg's video. Is it Tenberg or Tenbarge? I may have been saying her name wrong the whole time. I think it's Tenbarge. I apologize, Kat. Yeah, anyway, go watch that video on Taylor Lawrence's channel. Because they definitely talk about the history of it a lot more, and I mean these are bits of evidence that I have seen outside of this video. I don't want to just cite that as the only source of what things that Taylor Swift has done. You can look into all of these things by yourself. But yeah, it's simply not enough to passively consume Taylor Swift anymore, and to passively consume her propaganda of what her image is through her work. It's not enough. It's not enough. You have to look at what she says in interviews and who she hangs out with. Because it's really interesting and very bad and very dangerous. And she's a billionaire, so you probably just shouldn't support her anyway. As Billie Eilish said, donate your money. Donate your money. You don't need it. You don't need it. Give it away to someone something more useful. And maybe don't like your friends cancelled. I actually like my friends super woke.
You think that Taylor Swift is a Nazi now. You are so alienated from society that you will not be able to build coalitions because being a Nazi is really fucking bad.
Just been watching back Hank Green's video, the one that he deleted. And I just wanted to add that he seems to consider the people who have called Taylor Swift a Nazi to be extremely extremist and extremely online, chronically online, not extremist, chronically online, and therefore detached from reality. And I think this maybe misses quite a fundamental part of what's going on here. And I find it really interesting because what I would say is that actually the people who are obviously Swifties kind of have a reputation for digging into things and seeing something that maybe isn't there, like the whole gay lib theory. I feel like it's been brought up a lot recently. But I think one thing to note is that these people have a lot of information. They have a lot of information, and they're having it in sort of a closed discussion for the most part of and only parts of that break through. And it seems like actually if you look into it, there's if you look into the evidence that hasn't become mainstream because Taylor Swift puts out so much corporate bullshit that is mostly what is talked about with her, and corporate and bullshit PR and stuff, like Travis Kelce. It's all just the distractions and constant discussion that happens around her that does not focus on her politics anymore, like it did when 2010s era, pop feminism, as discussed. So where Hank Green describes chronically online people as delusional, I suppose I would argue that they're also the most informed. These are, I think, these are events that people aren't talking about, and not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, because I think these people aren't that. There is actually very compelling, genuine evidence that wasn't talked about enough, that Taylor Swift does at the very least run in some right-wing circles. And ignoring that is not some form of social cohesion that needs to happen. That is something that the mainstream media hasn't talked about, but is very much real. And I want to say that I understand with Hank Green not knowing about this, that's how it can seem from an outside perspective, especially when Swiftie community has had a history of twisting the view of things. At least that's how we've been sold the gay love theory. I don't know enough. But like, when you look at it, I think it's drawn in a new audience to these things. The thing is, it's drawn in a political commentary audience, not to the evidence, but to the discussers. And that's what Hank Green is part of. They are commenting on the people discussing this without actually being a part of the discussion themselves. Because as soon as you look at the discussion and you look at the evidence, actually, things aren't what they seem. Taylor Swift does run in right-wing circles. Or at the very least, seems to be very tolerant to them. I hope that makes sense. I think this is my point in my video. And hopefully this isn't just ramblings. It just seems very unfair. Well, I understand where Hank Green is coming from. I think it's an understandable take to have. But I think as soon as you know more about it, as Hank Green should have done, and I'm sure he understands that now, is that it's very unfair to write off the people discussing this and to only view the people discussing it and talk about them as a type of person, a type of Taylor Swift fan, or type of Taylor Swift critic, when actually this needs to remain a discussion about Taylor Swift and about her actions. Because people have differing levels of knowledge, and what the mainstream media talks about is generally not the important part of this conversation. Anyway, go listen to some reasonable artists who are I don't know, not silent on genocides and actually stand for something important. Okay.